This is Annie Enningenberg, and today we're going to discuss Brahms, our second composer. Last week we talked about Beethoven. Next week we'll talk about Dvorak. But today we'll talk about Brahms. When you read about Brahms, you learn a lot about the different ways he composed, the different songs he wrote, some that aren't very familiar. When I thought of him, I thought of the lullaby. Da 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 da. That's what I think about when I hear him. But that is not what a lot of people write about. It was actually not even on our timeline card. It was not mentioned in my composer book. He is much more famous for his romantic period pieces and symphonies and waltzes. So we're going to learn a little bit about Brahms. Brahms was born in 1833. So he was born in Germany during a time where the world was very much changing. America had their 7th president. There were revolutions happening in France and Austria and Germany and Italy. So Brahms was alive for a lot of change that we'll see. So let's step into our timeline, learn a little bit about what was going on when he was born to when he died, and then we'll look at a map where he was from. I bet you can guess where he moves. Vienna. And we'll also discuss just some facts about him. So to start, Brahms, like I said, was born in 1833. This is around the time of Andrew Jackson starting the Indian Removal Act. That was about 1830. In 1837, you'll see Cherokee Trail of Tears. He was 4 when that happened. In the 1840s, when he's growing up and he's starting his piano lessons, that is a time when you're going to think about all the revolutions I brought up, but also that's a time when North America is getting its borders. You're going to see Canada and America have their border. You're going to see America at war with Mexico a lot, and they're going to have their borders. So North America is figuring out what it looks like. Europe is in the middle of a romantic period of the arts. We are going to see Tchaikovsky and Dvorak right along with Brahms growing up side by side, producing music at the same time. These men, I know Brahms and Dvorak knew each other, but these men were almost the same age, with probably 4 to 7 years apart, all probably dying within 1 to 4 years of each other. They could have been brothers, they could have been cousins, they could have been in high school together. So these guys have a lot of the same sound, which is defining the Romantic period. He was alive for the Cherokee Trail of Tears. He was alive for the Communist Manifesto, published by Marx. He was alive when British Queen Victoria began ruling over India. The sun never set on the British Empire. He was alive for the Civil War. 1861, the Civil War began. 1861, he was in his 20s. He was alive, let's see, anything else? When Darwin published The Origin of Species, Dominion of Canada, and he dies around the time that Otto von Bismarck unifies Germany. So, a lot going on. America's getting her act together, figuring out her borders, going through some presidents, having the Civil War. Europe has all of these revolutions happening. And in the middle of all of that, all of these countries figuring out what they think, how they want to be run, who they are, what their borders are. You're going to see a lot of songs in the Romantic period, ushering into the modern period, that are very patriotic. And you're going to hear a lot of folk songs. And you're going to see Brahms, who is from Germany and moves to Austria, which border each other. He's going to be most famous for his Hungarian waltzes. But we'll discuss more of the folk and patriotic songs next week. Other contemporaries at his time are Strauss, Mendelssohn, Schubert, who he's very good friends with, and Wagner. Okay, we're going to leave that out. Just to, sometimes when I think Civil War and then World War One, World War Two, because one happened in the 1800s and one happened in the 1900s, my brain doesn't put that together very well. So, just to give you an idea, he was alive for Andrew Jackson. And then when he died, World War One happened only 15, 16 years later. So, America is such a young country that he was alive for a lot of its history. Okay, so now that we have a little bit of timeline for him, I want to show you a map. We've looked at this map a couple times now, but again, let's look at Germany and let's see where it borders Austria. Okay, now, like I do with my own children, find the Mediterranean Sea, right here. Find the Mediterranean Sea, you can find the center of the world. Find your boot, here's Italy. And just so I double check and don't do this wrong, because I'm looking at it backwards, here's Germany, right here. Remember, Van Gogh was up here. We talked about Germany last week. And the pink underneath it is Austria. And those are places we're going to look at today as we go through our timeline. Now, Brahms, here he is with his bushy beard. So cute. Okay. He's actually wasn't that nice, I learned. But Brahms was born in Hamburg, Germany in 1833. And this was a time, like we talked, of social change, also technological change. The telegraph's invented that year. And like we discussed, in America, the Civil War was happening, but slavery was abolished in the British Empire during his life, too. Brahms studied piano, music theory, and composition. As a teenager, he helped support his family by playing piano in sailor dance halls and taverns at night. Brahms was one of 3 children. I believe he had 2 brothers. And according to this, music was introduced by his father, not like Beethoven. His father was a double Hamburg Philharmonic Society, and Brahms learned to play when he was about 7. He was an accomplished musician, but it says here his family's financial burdens by playing a lot around the city docks and earning money at local inns. Brahms was a music scholar. He loved music history, he loved literature, he loved looking to those Baroque and classical compositions for his inspiration. He was a collector of musical manuscripts. He was very shy. He was kind of melancholy. That means he was not exactly sad, but he wasn't an energetic person. He liked to travel. He loved nature. He valued his privacy and independence. He didn't want to be, he wanted his music to be famous, but he didn't want people knowing him very well. He was just kind of held back. He was financially rich. Financially, he was very well off. He was a rich man, but he lived very, very frugally. If you look at pictures of his home, he would rent parts of his room. He was very, very, very frugal. He financially supported composers like Dvorak, who we'll learn about next week. His work was rooted in the Baroque and classical periods, revealing the influence of Bach and Haydn and Mozart. Brahms composed during the Romantic era, but was affected by the tides of upheaval that were coming in. Remember, we discussed the modern period. His music, consequently, had bursts of emotion, there were spontaneous moments in it, and there were contrasting rhythms. In the song I'm going to send you this week, you're going to even hear a lot of strings, you're going to hear a loud part, then all of a sudden you'll think the song ended, but it didn't. It was a pause, and then you'll hear the song almost sound like it's fighting, like going, yes, no, back and forth. People loved it. It was a new sound, and I'm really, really happy they picked this song for you that we'll send you. I think it really does pull together the most Brahmy of Brahm music. um, he had a warm, but it also had dark tones. Um, it's very, 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 very much a romantic period song. Um, or he is a romantic era artist, but the song we picked is an excellent example of that. Brahms incorporated many folk tunes into his work. He modeled his songwriting after Schubert, who he was very, very close to, and very close to his wife as well. He is considered one of the best songwriters of the 19th century. He admired the Viennese waltzes of Strauss, which shaped his own solo piano pieces. One of the rare composers to be recognized while alive, Brahms was particularly praised by Schumann. Brahms created masterpieces in all forms except opera. He wrote a German Requiem and Symphony No. 4, which you will look at today. Although Brahms is described as a humanist and an agnostic, he drew from biblical texts, often in two of his most famous compositions, including Requiem, which professes faith in the resurrection and reconciliation with God. Brahms was a Lutheran. He was raised in the church, and he does not have a lot of symphonies because he was a perfectionist. But two of the 4 or 5 very famous ones draw from Hebrew text and Old Testament text and have a lot of inspiration from God and the Bible. Some notes about Brahms. Brahms went to where? Vienna. Brahms was in Vienna, and that is where he has a statue that was actually, I'll have to send you the picture. I printed it, but I don't see it. There's actually a statue of him in a park in Vienna, even today, that you could go see. He is hailed as one of the best, if not the best, romantic period composers. He, in Vienna, started choral groups. He worked with a cappella singers, but he never did an opera. He never married. He never had any kids. He enjoyed steady success, but he, remember, was a very shy, quiet, private person. He was also known to be very stubborn and uncompromising. Some people told him, write in his biographies, that he was very sarcastic to adults. At one time, he left a room saying, if I did not insult you, I am sorry. He insulted people. He was very critical. Schubert's wife actually said she hated asking Brahms what he thought of her music because he was very, very critical, but he was also always right. So it was a little backhanded compliment saying he's a very critical, sarcastic, hard to please man, but his feedback is excellent because he's always right. Brahms was a perfectionist, so we don't have a lot of his work because he destroyed a lot of his work. Brahms was going to die, burned everything in a fire. He did not want us to see anything that he didn't think was perfect. This shows a little bit of pride that Brahms had. He wasn't easy to get feedback. He didn't take feedback well, but he dished it well. Let's see. So it says he destroyed about 20 string quartets. Yeah, I think we have a lot of it. And this composer, sorry, a lot of this is repeated. This composer passed away in 1896. His really good friend passed away before him. He passed away of liver failure, and he gave his last performance in March of 1897 in Vienna, dying a month later. So there is Brahms. I think one more important thing to point out, and maybe why he was so critical of himself, is that during his time, he was considered, after his first symphony, he was considered one of the three great Bs: Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms. So Brahms often felt overshadowed by Bach and Beethoven, and I think it's why he was so critical and worried, because if he was in the shadow of such great composers, he only wanted to do his best to stay in that league. He was very, very talented, and this is excellent, one famous critic actually referred to Brahms' First Symphony as Beethoven's 10th. So quite big shoes to fill. I hope you enjoyed learning about Brahms. Like last week, I'm going to be sending you this for Symphony number 4. And like last week, it'll go minute through what you need to listen to. I'll send the link for the download again. And I look forward to next week, which is coming really soon, because this video is getting to you very late, which I apologize for those technical difficulties. And next week, we'll do it again with Dvorak. I miss you all. Have a great day.